It seems like a crisis that's gone from bad to worse, to even worse, and still no end in sight. Lee Cowan begins our look at the chaos on the border.
On the day we celebrate moms in this country, there are thousands of other mothers and children living like this, on both sides of our border. The COVID-era law that effectively allowed both the Trump and Biden administrations to expel migrants back into Mexico before they could ask for asylum is no more. It expired. In its place, the Biden administration has imposed more restrictions on those seeking asylum, but that's really only a footnote to the larger border law that was really designed for the Cold War and in no way fits the misery of this moment.
U.S. refugee policy in the 1950s and 1960s was for Europeans. Because remember, this was a time when a refugee was primarily defined as somebody who was fleeing communism.
Our immigration policies have almost always been tied to the times, if not behind them. Yael Shacker, a historian and director of Refugees International, says up until the Civil War, we didn't even have a federal immigration policy. It was all left to the states.
On the East Coast, in New York and Massachusetts, there was actually quite a bit of anti-Irish sentiment. On the West Coast, starting in the 1850s and the 1860s, especially in California, you start to see the anti-Chinese sentiment.
In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. It was the first time we'd made any significant rule to exclude anyone. That aside, though, we were still largely open. Only about 2% of those who began arriving at Ellis Island were turned away. But by the 1920s, Americans began to worry that those from Southern and Eastern Europe were putting a strain on social services, which led the U.S. to clamp down on the number of Catholic and Jewish immigrants.
So they said, okay, we're going to give Germany and England very large quotas to come in, but from Italy, Poland, Greece, fewer numbers. They devised a quota system that discriminated based on nationality in that way.
The xenophobic quotas had an immediate impact. We rebuffed almost everyone trying to flee Nazi atrocities, for example.
Fleeing from Nazi Germany into the border towns of Holland is a new kind of refugee. The victim of an intolerance and persecution unparalleled since the Dark Ages.
It wasn't until refugees really started fleeing Vietnam in the late 70s, early 80s that we arrived at a definition of just what kind of persecution qualified a refugee for asylum. Political persecution, religious persecution, being a member of a social group, just to name a few. But critics say it was all still short-sighted.
The United States did not think of Mexicans as people who would seek asylum. They did not think of Central Americans as really people who would be seeking asylum.
Today, we're the North Star for asylum seekers all across Latin America, creating a supernova that doesn't respond well to the laws of current border physics. Cecilia Munoz was a senior advisor to President Obama and the first Latina to lead the White House Domestic Policy Council.
What we're not doing is having the policy debate around what should our asylum system look like? Who should we be admitting? What kind of dangers are we prepared to protect people from?
The unprecedented number of migrants arriving at our southern border today, she says, are fleeing for reasons that don't always neatly fit that definition of refugee.
If you're fleeing domestic violence, does that qualify you for asylum? If you're fleeing gang violence, should that qualify you for asylum? If you're fleeing because your village got destroyed because there was a hurricane, should that qualify you for asylum?
More than 2.1 million people are waiting for the answer to that very question. The backlog is so deep, the average asylum case now takes between 4 and 5 years to complete.
You arrive to a country where you think they will help you based on the stories you heard. But it wasn't like that.
Henry Rivas Cibrian began seeking asylum back in 2017, seeking refuge from street gangs and police in El Salvador who he says brutalized him for being gay.
What would have happened if you'd stayed?
A lot. There was an attempt against my life. I have a scar on my nose. They slit it. They also pointed at me with a firearm to murder me.
Tu casa. Mi casa.
Ava Banash is Henry's attorney.
Not everybody's going to qualify for asylum under our statute, but everybody should have a right to make their claim.
After 8 months in U.S. immigration detention, Henry was released, pending a court date.
Regular coffee? No regular coffee?
For the last 6 years, he's been living in Washington, D.C. His new husband, from Honduras, is also seeking asylum.
You're never truly comfortable, you're never truly settled, and knowing that it could be ripped out from you at any point, it's a tough way to live.
Last year, the government decided it didn't want to spend any more resources on his case and moved to dismiss it. And an immigration judge agreed.
¿Quieres azúcar?
Sí.
That leaves Henry in legal limbo. He's appealing and filing a new application for asylum, but all it really does is put him right back to where he was 6 years ago, at the back of the asylum-seeking line.
Thank you. Yo creí
I
que
believed that the light at the end of the tunnel was getting closer, and I see the light from very far away one more time.
It's remarkable how the pictures and the narrative have changed very little since this report on immigration back in the mid-'80s. But what you're seeing here is a trickle compared to today.
The pressures of population, poverty, and politics, coupled with the promise of America, keep pushing the world to our borders. Our current policy is immigration anarchy, full of holes and hypocrisy.
The debate over how to fix what almost everyone agrees is broken is still at a standoff. Basically, Republicans want the border tightened before they address anything else.
Moments ago, House Republicans passed the strongest border security bill this country has ever seen.
Democrats generally agree the border should be secured, but want overall reform now.
I'm lucky enough to say that I've lived the American dream. I believe it's a dream that should be available for everybody.
While Congress bickers back and forth, both the Trump and Biden administrations have turned to issuing executive orders. Recently, the White House opened a humanitarian back door for as many as 30,000 migrants a month to enter from Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti. But just like with Trump's executive orders, Biden's have also landed in court.
Congress makes the laws, the executive branch doesn't.
Jonathan Skrmetti is Tennessee's Attorney General.
Ostensibly, the Biden administration says that this is a way to basically divert the flow away from the border, almost as a relief valve.
Well, it's not legal. Congress was very clear in the law. It's supposed to be for a small number of people on a case-by-case basis.
He's joined 20 other red states in asking for an injunction to Biden's parole program, calling it a blatant end run around Congress.
It's a tragedy when people are driven from their homes, and it's understandable that they want to come here for the opportunities that we offer. But if everybody comes here because of every bit of adversity they encounter, we're not going to be able to take care of them. We can't wish the problem away. It's going to take hard work and hard choices to figure this out.
Putting them in prison isn't going to stop them. Separating them from their children isn't going to necessarily stop them, which is crazy. If we're willing to go to the extreme cruelty, it will work, but otherwise it won't.
Our track record on immigration is imperfect at best, but the two sides need to keep trying. Otherwise, the Statue of Liberty's lamp may continue to light nothing but dysfunction and chaos.
It's not about politics, it's not about ideology, it's about helping people in need at a time of crisis. It's really what we do when we're at our best in this country.